On the 14th of Muharram, 684 AH, the Red Sea was a mirror of polished brass, the air so still it felt like the world was holding its breath. Then, a veteran sailor named Tariq, a man who had faced a dozen tempests without flinching, began to weep at the rail. His weeping turned to hollow, desperate laughter before he simply stepped over the side into the indifferent water. There was no splash, no struggle. This was not the act of a madman, but the first terrifying symptom of an encounter with a presence known in hushed 13th century Arab records as Gyr'Tar-Og, an entity that did not hunt ships, but the very sanity of their crews. If you believe the ocean still holds secrets like this, subscribe to the Maritime Chronicler and join us as we chart these forbidden currents. Let us know in the comments from which port of call you are joining our global expedition. Your subscription ensures we can continue to dredge up the lost logs and forgotten truths that sleep in the silent abyss. It began subtly, a tremor in the timbers, a low, almost sub-audible hum that seemed to vibrate not through the air, but directly through the soles of our feet, up into the marrow of our bones. Headaches followed, sharp and insistent, blossoming behind the eyes of every man. The crew grew restless, their voices hushed, their eyes darting, seeing shadows where none should be. Arguments erupted over nothing, quick and brutal, ending as suddenly as they began. One sailor, a man named Tariq, a seasoned mariner who had faced down a dozen tempests, stood at the rail, his face pale, his eyes wide with a terror I could not comprehend. He began to weep, then to laugh, a hollow, desperate sound, before he simply stepped over the side into the calm, indifferent water. No splash, no struggle, just gone. The vibration intensified, a pressure in the skull, a whisper in the mind, promising madness. The water around us remained undisturbed, yet the ship felt as if it were being dragged by an unseen hand, pulled by something vast and ancient beneath the surface, something that never broke the water, but merely resonated through it, through us. My men are turning on each other, their minds unraveling under the weight of this silent, unseen horror. What ancient, writhing darkness stirs beneath the waves, so profound it steals not our lives, but our very sanity? We cast our minds back, not to the familiar shores of the West, but to the sun-drenched, spice-laden ports of the Arabian Sea in the 13th century. This was an age when the Dhow, that elegant, lateen-sailed vessel, was mistress of the waves, carrying frankincense and silks, knowledge and philosophy across vast, glittering expanses. Arab mariners, unlike their European counterparts, did not merely sail upon the ocean. They felt its pulse, understood its moods, and knew its deepest, most guarded secrets. Their world was one of intricate celestial navigation, of monsoons charted with uncanny precision, and of a profound, almost spiritual reverence for the water that cradled their lives and livelihoods. But even within their voluminous charts and the sprawling, meticulously detailed Kitab al-Fawaid fi Usul ilm al-Bahr wal-Qawaid, the great navigational treatises that guided their ships, there existed a shadowed, unwritten lore, whispers exchanged in hushed tones between seasoned captains and wizened pearl divers, tales of entities that defied the rational, beings that belonged not to the known world, but to the very fabric of the abyss. For them, the sea was not just a blue expanse, it was a living entity, its depths a veiled realm where forgotten powers slumbered. Among these half-forgotten terrors, shrouded in the deepest currents of their oral tradition, was a name uttered with a peculiar mix of dread and reluctant respect: Gyr'Tar-Og. It was not a creature of scale and tooth in the manner of the common sea monster, nor a phantom of the drowned. Its very existence was a paradox, a living paradox of the deep. The earliest, most fragmented accounts, gleaned from obscure fragments of parchment found within the dusty libraries of ancient Basra and Baghdad, hinted at something vast, truly colossal, described as a dark body, several ships in length, writhing beneath the surface. Yet crucially, these accounts never spoke of a visible form, never of a fin breaking the surface, or a wave cast by its passage. It was a presence, felt, not seen. Its movement, they claimed, was accompanied by a deep, unsettling vibration, a resonance that seemed to travel not through the water, but through the very air, through the very bones of the ship. There were no splashes, no roiling wakes, merely a profound, silent tremor. And it was this silence, this unseen, unfathomable bulk, that shattered the minds of men. The chronicles speak of an unusual air resonance, a pressure in the skull that would afflict crews unfortunate enough to encounter it. Headaches, sharp and debilitating, would morph into a creeping paranoia, a profound unease that turned comrade against comrade or drove men to the rail, compelled by an unseen force to leap into the indifferent embrace of the waves. Gyr'Tar-Og was not a beast to be hunted, nor a monster to be slain. It was a reactive presence, a guardian of the sea's darkness, a being that manifested when the delicate, ancient balance of the ocean was disturbed. A silence as thick as seabed silt would precede it, and a madness as deep as the Marianas Trench would follow. Let us now plunge into the heart of one such encounter, a chilling account pieced together from a recently discovered, water-stained fragment of a logbook, unearthed from the ruins of a collapsed library in Old Sana'i. The year is 1285 CE. The vessel is the Al-Haq, a stout mercantile dhow, her single lateen sail a proud white wing against the azure sky. Her captain, Omar al-Kindi, was a man of the sea, his face a map of sun-baked lines, his eyes the color of the deep, clear Arabian Gulf. He was a mariner of renown, his name whispered with respect from Muscat to Mombasa. His crew, a mix of hardened Yemenis and seasoned Zanzibaris, trusted him implicitly, for Omar had never lost a ship, nor a man to the capricious whims of the ocean. They were on a return voyage from the lucrative spice markets of Malabar, their holds heavy with cinnamon, cardamom, and the precious resins of frankincense and myrrh. The journey had been smooth, the monsoons favorable, and the men dreamt of home, of the cool shade of date palms, and the laughter of their children. The sun, a benevolent eye in the sky, cast a golden sheen upon the endless expanse of the Indian Ocean. The Al-Haq cut a graceful line through the gentle swell, the rhythmic creak of her timbers, a comforting lullaby. Then the change began. Subtle at first, a shift in the very fabric of the air. The gentle breeze that had filled their sails seemed to sigh, one last mournful breath, and then vanished, leaving the Al-Haq becalmed, her great sail hanging limp, a deflated lung against the immensity of the sky. The sea, moments before a living, breathing entity, transformed into a vast, unbroken sheet of polished obsidian, reflecting the sun with an unnatural, blinding intensity. The cheerful chatter of the crew died, replaced by a tense, watchful silence. The seabirds, those ever-present companions of any long voyage, were gone, their squawking calls replaced by an eerie, profound stillness. Omar al-Kindi, standing at the tiller, felt a prickle of unease trace its way down his spine. His decades at sea had taught him that such unnatural calm often preceded the most violent tempests. He sniffed the air, but there was no scent of impending storm, only the clean, sharp tang of salt and something else, something indescribable, a faint, almost metallic tang, like old copper left in the sun, yet deeper, more primal. He scanned the horizon, his keen eyes searching for any telltale cloud formation, any ripple on the water that might betray a change in the weather. But there was nothing, only the mirror-like sea, the brassy sky, and the profound, oppressive silence. Then it started, a low, almost sub-audible hum, a vibration that seemed to emanate from the very depths beneath them. It wasn't a sound heard with the ears, but felt in the chest, a deep, resonant thrum that traveled through the very timbers of the Al-Haq, up through the soles of their bare feet and into their bones. It was like the distant, ponderous turning of some colossal, unseen mechanism far below. The water around the dhow, though still glass smooth, began to behave strangely. Great oily patches, dark as ink, would appear and disappear, as if the sea itself were bruised, or as if some immense, unseen body were moving beneath the surface, displacing the water with a vast, silent ripple. There were no waves, no splashes, No telltale wake, only this unsettling, almost imperceptible movement, a dark body writhing beneath the surface. Several ships in length, yet never breaking it. The hum intensified, a pressure building behind their eyes. The first mate, a burly, stoic man named Salim, clutched his head, his face contorted in a grimace. "By the beard of the Prophet, Captain, my head feels as if it will split apart." Others murmured in agreement, their hands instinctively rising to their temples. The air itself seemed to resonate, a low, buzzing frequency that settled deep within their skulls, turning their thoughts into a muddled, buzzing fog. Omar felt it too, a dull ache that quickly sharpened into a throbbing pain behind his eyes, making it difficult to focus, to think clearly. This was no ordinary headache. This was a resonance that felt alien, intrusive, as if something vast and ancient were attempting to communicate, or perhaps simply exist, within the very confines of their minds. The Al-Haq drifted, a silent, helpless cork upon an unnaturally still sea, slowly, inexorably, being pulled along by an unseen, unheard force. The silent movement of Gyr'Tar-Og, the silent internal hum deepened, a relentless thrumming that clawed at the edges of their sanity. What began as a mere headache soon blossomed into a full-blown assault on the mind. The Al-Haq remained becalmed, caught in an unseen current, drifting slowly, inexorably, towards a horizon that offered no solace, only the endless, polished expanse of the ocean. The sun, once a source of life-giving warmth, now felt like a baleful, indifferent eye, magnifying their distress in the oppressive stillness. Captain Omar al-Kindi gripped the tiller, his knuckles white, his own head throbbing with an alien rhythm. He tried to issue orders to rally his men, but his voice felt like a rasp in his throat, and his thoughts felt thick, sluggish, as if wading through seabed silt. The crew, once a cohesive, disciplined unit, began to unravel. Their initial murmurs of discomfort had escalated into whispered accusations, then into open hostility. "You cursed us, Jafar," snarled one sailor, a hulking man named Khalil, his eyes bloodshot, his face contorted. He lunged at Jafar, a quiet, pious man, accusing him of hoarding fresh water, though their casks were full and accounted for. A brief, brutal scuffle erupted, quickly broken up by Salim, the first mate, whose own face was pale and drawn, his movements jerky. The air was thick with a palpable tension, a simmering paranoia that seemed to rise from the very decks, a venom seeping into their minds. The air resonance was the true torment. It wasn't a sound that vibrated the eardrum, but a pressure within the skull, an insistent, low-frequency thrum that made coherent thought impossible. It felt as though their brains were being gently, but relentlessly, squeezed. Every shadow seemed to lengthen, to twist into menacing shapes. Every creak of the ship's timbers, usually a comforting sound, now sounded amplified, accusatory, like the groans of a dying beast. Omar watched in horror as his men, one by one, succumbed to the unseen influence. A young man, barely more than a boy, who had been singing shanties just yesterday, now sat huddled on the deck, weeping silently, his face buried in his hands. Another, a seasoned navigator, began to meticulously retie a knot on a coil of rope, over and over, his movements obsessive, his eyes wide and vacant. The paranoia deepened. Men glared at each other, suspecting treachery, imagined slights, and hidden intentions. The camaraderie that bound them together, forged over countless voyages, was dissolving like salt in the sea. Most terrifying were the sudden, inexplicable impulses. Tariq, the sailor who had stepped overboard in the hook, was not the first. Another man, Yusuf, began to climb the rigging, his movements frantic, his eyes fixed on something unseen in the empty sky. When Omar shouted at him to come down, Yusuf merely laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound that scraped against the captain's raw nerves. "He calls me captain," Yusuf shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the mirror-smooth water beneath them. "He calls me home." Before anyone could react, he launched himself from the mast, falling with an unnerving silence into the depths, leaving scarcely a ripple. The water remained unnervingly calm, a dark, bruised sheen spreading across its surface in places, as if something vast and heavy were shifting beneath. Just out of sight, the Al-Haq continued its slow, silent drift, pulled by an unseen, unheard force. The crew, now a collection of terrified, paranoid, and increasingly desperate individuals, began to turn on Omar himself. Whispers of bad luck and cursed captain circulated like a fever. Their faces, once etched with respect, were now contorted with suspicion and a growing, irrational hatred. The unseen presence beneath them was not attacking their hull, nor tearing at their sails. It was attacking their minds, unraveling the very threads of their humanity, leaving them vulnerable, exposed, and utterly alone in the vast, indifferent ocean. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of blood and fire, casting long, malevolent shadows that seemed to writhe with the unseen, unheard presence that had claimed their sanity. The chilling accounts from vessels like the Al-Haq are not isolated incidents. For centuries, these fragmented tales of unseen aquatic presences and mental unraveling were dismissed as the fevered dreams of desperate mariners or the exaggerations of superstitious minds. They were relegated to the realm of folklore, whispered in hushed tones around flickering campfires, but rarely given serious scholarly attention until recently. Our understanding of Gyr'Tar-Og, and indeed of the very nature of maritime mystery itself, has been profoundly recontextualized by a series of extraordinary archaeological and linguistic breakthroughs. Among the most significant are the recently translated fragments from the lost Kitab al-Asrar al-Bahr, or Book of Sea Secrets. This remarkable text, believed to be the work of a reclusive Sufi scholar and natural philosopher known only as Al-Jahiz, who lived in the late 12th and early 13th centuries, offers a startlingly different perspective on the creatures of the deep. Al-Jahiz, a polymath whose writings ranged from zoology to theology, spent decades compiling accounts from sailors, pearl divers, and coastal communities across the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. He was not merely collecting myths, he was seeking patterns, attempting to discern the underlying truths behind the bewildering phenomena reported by those who ventured far from land. According to Al-Jahiz's fragmented treatise, Gyr'Tar-Og is not a monster in the conventional sense. It is not a predator driven by hunger or malice, seeking to crush ships and devour men. Instead, Al-Jahiz describes it as a reactive presence, a colossal serpentine being woven from the very fabric of the deep, a living embodiment of the ocean's primordial stillness and its ancient, unfathomable wisdom. He refers to it as a guardian of the sea's darkness, a being whose sole purpose is to preserve the balance of the abyss, to shield its profound mysteries from the intrusive, often destructive, incursions of humanity. This concept is further explored by modern scholars, notably Dr. Layla Khatib, a renowned expert in pre-Ottoman maritime folklore from Cairo University. Dr. Khatib, whose groundbreaking work has brought Al-Jahiz's obscure texts to wider academic attention, posits that Gyr'Tar-Og manifests when this delicate balance is disturbed. It is not an aggressor, Dr. Khatib explains in a recently published paper, but a force of nature, a silent alarm system for the deep. Its appearance, which is always experienced as a profound sensory and psychological event rather than a visual one, is a warning. Its methods are not physical destruction, but a mental unraveling, a subtle, insidious attack on the human mind, designed to deter, to drive away, to preserve the sanctity of its domain. The vibration and air resonance described in the ancient logs are, for Dr. Khatib, the creature's primary means of interaction. It's a form of bioacoustic defense, she theorizes, a frequency beyond the normal range of human hearing, yet capable of inducing profound neurological and psychological effects. The headaches, the paranoia, the compulsion to self-destruction, these are not accidental byproducts. They are the creature's defense mechanism, a non-lethal, yet utterly devastating means of expelling the disturbance from its sacred waters. It's a terrifying thought, a guardian whose weapon is not tooth or claw, but the very unraveling of your sanity. The true horror of Gyr'Tar-Og lies not in what it does to your body, but what it does to your mind. If these ancient echoes from the deep and the chilling insights they offer have pulled you into the profound mysteries of the maritime world, then lend us your support. Like this video, share it with those who dare to glimpse the unseen, and subscribe to The Maritime Chronicler. For more voyages into the forgotten depths of history and myth, your engagement helps us bring these half-forgotten truths to light. The warnings of Al-Jahiz, however profound, were often lost to the tides of time, or dismissed by those who saw the ocean merely as a highway for trade. The human impulse to explore, to exploit, to push the boundaries of the known world often blinded them to the ancient wisdom that urged caution and respect. And so, the encounters continued, each one a chilling testament to the unseen guardian's relentless purpose. Consider the harrowing fate of the Samarkand Star, a heavily laden trading vessel sailing under the command of Captain Amir al-Mansur. The year is 12999 CE. She was a newer, larger dhow than the Al-Haq, a testament to the burgeoning trade routes stretching from the Mediterranean to the distant Spice Islands. Captain al-Mansur, a man known for his unflappable composure and a keen mind for profit, was pushing his crew hard, eager to reach the markets of Hormuz before the change of monsoons. They were in a stretch of open ocean, far from any land, the sea a vast, indifferent canvas. The first sign was the familiar, unnatural calm. The wind died, the sails collapsed, and the Samarkand Star became a silent, drifting hulk. Then came the vibration, low and insidious, beginning as a faint tremor in the deck, then quickly escalating into a full-body thrum that resonated deep within their chests, making their teeth ache. Captain al-Mansur, initially dismissing it as some strange current or a distant, submerged tremor, soon felt the familiar, debilitating headache bloom behind his eyes. It was a pressure, an internal buzzing, as if a swarm of angry bees had nested inside his skull. But what followed was far more terrifying than mere physical discomfort. The crew, already tired from the long voyage, began to exhibit alarming symptoms. One moment they were mending nets, the next, a petty disagreement over a shared meal would explode into a vicious brawl, men attacking each other with a ferocity that defied their shared history. Al-Mansur witnessed two of his most loyal sailors, brothers from the same village, turn on each other with knives over a misspoken word, their eyes wide and devoid of reason. It took the combined strength of 4 men to pry them apart, leaving them bleeding and bewildered, unable to explain their sudden, murderous rage. The air resonance intensified, a constant, low-frequency hum that seemed to strip away their self-control, their fear, their very inhibitions. The ship was no longer a safe haven. It was a cage, filled with increasingly volatile, paranoid men. The most disturbing manifestation of Gyr'Tar-Og's influence, however, was the profound, almost magnetic compulsion to self-destruction. A young deckhand, a quiet, melancholic soul named Faris, stood at the rail, staring into the dark, bruise-like patches that marred the otherwise calm surface of the sea. The unseen movement beneath them was more pronounced now, a vast, undulating presence felt through the vibrating timbers of the ship. Faris began to hum, a tuneless, mournful sound. Then he started to climb the rigging, his movements slow, deliberate, as if in a trance. Captain al-Mansur shouted, his voice hoarse, but Faris seemed not to hear. He reached the top of the main mast, a tiny silhouette against the vast sky, and then, with a strange, beatific smile, he simply launched himself into the void. His body hit the water with a dull, sickening thud, barely a splash, and then he was gone, swallowed by the indifferent depths. Hours later, another man, driven to distraction by the constant, maddening hum, began to tear at his own clothes, screaming about unseen tormentors. He raved about whispers from the water, about ancient eyes watching from the depths. He clawed at his own face then, with a sudden, violent movement, he threw himself over the side, his final shriek abruptly silenced by the dark, glassy surface. Captain Al-Mansur, despite his own escalating headache and the creeping tendrils of paranoia, fought desperately to maintain order. He ordered his remaining men to be lashed to the masts, to tie themselves to anything solid, to prevent further losses. But even bound, their eyes rolled wildly, their bodies twitched, and their mouths worked, whispering to unseen entities or muttering threats to their comrades. The Samarkand Star drifted, a vessel of madness, its crew succumbing not to storm or beast, but to the silent, unseen, mind-shattering presence of Gyr'Tar-Og. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the ship in a terrifying, premature twilight, leaving them adrift in a sea that held their sanity captive. What truly sets the encounters with Gyr'Tar-Og apart from any other maritime phenomenon, any other monster of the deep, is its unique method of engagement. It does not attack with tooth or claw, nor does it ensnare with coils or tentacles. Its weapon is far more insidious, far more primal, the manipulation of pure sensation, a silent assault on the very architecture of human consciousness. The accounts, consistent across disparate regions and centuries, speak not of a monstrous visual, but of an overwhelming, inescapable feeling. The core of this experience is the deep, non-audible vibration. Imagine a frequency so low, so profound, that it bypasses the ear entirely, resonating directly with the internal organs, with the fluid in the inner ear, with the very bones of the skull. This is not the rumble of distant thunder, nor the thrum of a ship's engines. This is a vibration that feels internal, as if the very air around you, and indeed the very blood within your veins, is humming with an alien energy. Sailors described it as a pressure, a growing weight in their chests, a buzzing sensation in their teeth, and most universally, a relentless, splitting headache that started behind the eyes and radiated outwards, twisting thought into a tangled, painful knot. This was the air resonance that ancient chroniclers spoke of. Modern research into infrasound, frequencies below the range of human hearing, offers tantalizing parallels. Infrasound, naturally generated by phenomena like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or even powerful ocean waves, is known to have profound psychological effects on humans. Exposure to certain infrasound frequencies can induce feelings of anxiety, sorrow, extreme dread, discomfort, disorientation, and even hallucinations. It can cause internal organ vibrations, leading to nausea, dizziness, and intense pressure in the head. Imagine a being capable of generating such a frequency, not as a byproduct of its movement, but as a deliberate, controlled emission. This is what the lore of Gyr'Tar-Og suggests. The psychological breakdown was the true terror. It began subtly, an increase in irritability, a shortening of tempers, a pervasive sense of unease. Then, as the vibration intensified, came the paranoia. Men who had shared births and battles for years would suddenly eye each other with suspicion, convinced of unseen slights, of hidden betrayals. Logic would dissolve, replaced by a raw, unreasoning fear. The crew would turn on each other, their minds twisted by the relentless pressure, their inhibitions stripped away, resulting in the sudden, brutal fights documented in the logs. But the most chilling aspect was the compulsion, the inexplicable urge to abandon the safety of the ship and leap into the calm, yet terrifyingly deep, water. This was not the panic-driven jump of a man fleeing a visible monster. This was a slow, almost serene act of self-destruction, driven by an unseen force that seemed to whisper promises of peace, of release, of home in the depths. It was as if the creature's resonant frequency was not merely causing discomfort, but actively rewiring the human mind, overriding the primal instinct for self-preservation, replacing it with an overwhelming, blissful desire for oblivion. The absence of a visible form only deepened the horror. There was no monster to fight, no enemy to confront. The dark body writhing beneath the surface, several ships in length, was never seen, only felt. Its movement was accompanied by vibration, not splashes, ensuring that its presence was utterly alien, defying all known laws of the natural world. This profound elusiveness, this attack on the very concept of tangible threat, amplified the psychological impact. The fear was not of being devoured, but of being driven mad, of having your own mind turn against you, a prisoner in your own skull. Gyr'Tar-Og was not merely a threat to life, but a threat to sanity, a silent, resonant nightmare that spoke directly to the deepest, most vulnerable parts of the human psyche. Its true terror lay in its ability to unravel the very threads of what it meant to be human, leaving behind only the echoing silence of a shattered mind. The very concept of Gyr'Tar-Og as a reactive presence, or guardian of the deep, forces us to delve deeper than mere monstrous encounters. It beckons us to examine the deep-root principle. What then could have disturbed the ancient balance of the sea in the 13th century to rouse such a primordial entity? This question leads us down paths less traveled, beyond the simple narrative of man versus beast, into the intricate relationship between humanity and the vast, often unknowable, forces of nature. The 13th century, particularly in the thriving maritime world of the Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean, was an era of unprecedented expansion. Arab traders, skilled navigators, pushed the boundaries of exploration further than ever before. New trade routes were being charted, new fishing grounds discovered, and the sheer volume of human activity on the oceans was steadily increasing. While we often associate large-scale environmental impact with the industrial age, it is plausible that even in this earlier period, human actions, when multiplied across hundreds of vessels and thousands of voyages, could have begun to create localized, yet significant disturbances. Consider the increasing demand for certain marine resources. Pearl diving, for instance, was a lucrative but intensely extractive industry. The continuous harvesting of oysters from specific reefs, the constant presence of human activity in previously untouched shallow and mid-depth waters could have been perceived as an intrusion. Similarly, early forms of large-scale fishing, though rudimentary by modern standards, might have placed unforeseen stresses on delicate ecosystems. Were these activities, even in their ancient forms, enough to trigger a guardian whose purpose was to maintain a sacred, undisturbed equilibrium? Al-Jahiz's texts hint at this, suggesting that the sea's darkness recoils from the greed of man, and its guardians awaken. Beyond direct human impact, we must also consider the possibility of unusual natural phenomena, interpreted through the lens of a reactive guardian. The 13th century was a period of some climatic volatility. Submarine volcanic activity, though rare, could have caused localized seismic disturbances, releasing powerful infrasound waves and altering deep-sea currents, potentially impacting the very environment in which such a creature as Gyr'Tar-Og might reside. Could these natural upheavals, perhaps exacerbated by human presence, have been the disturbance that roused the entity? The creature's non-splashing movement and its resonant effects could align with the propagation of seismic waves through water and air, creating the vibration and air resonance described by the terrified crews. Furthermore, the very act of deep-sea exploration, even if unintentional, might have been the catalyst. As Arab dhows pushed into ever more distant and deeper waters, they may have unknowingly encroached upon hitherto undisturbed abyssal realms. The sudden presence of a large, noisy vessel, even a wooden dhow, would generate significant low-frequency noise in the silent deep. In an environment of profound stillness, could be interpreted as a profound disturbance. It's a chilling thought that simply by venturing too far, by peering into places not meant for human eyes, humanity might inadvertently awaken forces that prefer to remain in shadow, guardians whose only response to intrusion is to drive the trespasser away, even if it means shattering their minds in the process. The deep root of Gyr'Tar-Og's manifestation, therefore, lies not merely in the existence of a creature, but in the intricate, often fraught, relationship between humanity's ambition and the ocean's ancient, sacred boundaries. It serves as a potent, terrifying reminder that some mysteries are best left undisturbed, some darkness best left unexplored, for fear of awakening guardians whose methods of preservation are beyond human comprehension. and whose warnings are etched not on charts, but in the unraveling sanity of those who dare to trespass. To truly grasp the essence of Gyr'Tar-Og, we must shed the Western-centric lens of monster and embrace the ancient Arab theological and philosophical perspectives that shaped its lore. Arab theologians and Sufi scholars, unlike their European counterparts, often viewed the natural world not as something to be conquered or merely understood through empirical observation, but as a vast, intricate manifestation of divine order, teeming with unseen forces and beings that served a higher purpose. Within this worldview, the sea, with its unfathomable depths and boundless expanse, was a realm of profound sanctity, a cosmic mirror reflecting the darkness and mystery of the divine itself. This sea's darkness was not an absence of light, but a profound, sacred unknown, a repository of primordial energies and ancient truths that humanity, with its limited perception and destructive tendencies, was not meant to fully comprehend or exploit. It was considered a sacred threshold, a boundary beyond which human influence should not extend. Enter Gyr'Tar-Og, not a creature of evil, but a guardian of this darkness, a sentinel of the abyss, tasked with preserving this sacred balance. Its purpose was not to inflict wanton destruction, but to react. Its manifestation, therefore, was not an act of malice, but a consequence of disturbance. When human vessels, driven by curiosity, commerce, or conquest, encroached too deeply into these sacred, undisturbed zones, or when their collective activities began to upset the delicate balance of the marine environment, Gyr'Tar-Og would stir. It was the ocean's immune response, a silent, resonant alarm system. This theological interpretation elevates Gyr'Tar-Og far beyond a mere cryptid or a fantastic beast. It becomes a manifestation of cosmic law, an embodiment of the ocean's inherent right to preserve its own ancient integrity. Its methods, the psychological torment, the headaches, the paranoia, the compulsion to self-destruction, are thus seen not as acts of cruelty, but as a form of divine deterrence. If physical destruction were its aim, it could surely shatter ships with its immense, unseen bulk. But its goal is to drive away, to instill such profound dread and mental fragmentation that the encroaching human presence retreats, leaving the sea's darkness undisturbed once more. The Arab scholars of the time, particularly those with Sufi leanings, understood that true power often resided not in brute force, but in subtle, unseen influence. They believed that the greatest threats were often those that attacked the spirit, the mind, rather than the body. Gyr'Tar-Og, in this context, is the perfect embodiment of such a threat. It forces humanity to confront its own fragility, its own susceptibility to the unseen, and the profound, humbling realization that there are forces in the world that operate on an entirely different scale of existence, with purposes beyond human comprehension. This philosophical route provides a terrifying nuance to the mystery. It's not just a creature, it's a living principle, an ancient reactive force upholding a divine mandate. It is a reminder that the ocean, in its deepest, most primal state, does not belong to humanity. We are merely temporary visitors on its surface, and there are realms within it that are meant to remain forever veiled, forever undisturbed. And if we, in our hubris, dare to trespass, the guardian will rise, not with a roar, but with a silent, mind-shattering hum, a profound resonance that whispers of the ancient, sacred darkness it is bound to protect. The silence of its attack is its most profound statement, a chilling testament to its divine purpose. The most unsettling and perhaps most terrifying aspect of Gyr'Tar-Og is its absolute elusiveness. Unlike the Kraken, whose monstrous tentacles might be glimpsed before they crush a ship, or the Leviathan, whose immense scales could be mistaken for islands, Gyr'Tar-Og offers no such tangible form. It remains a ghost of the unseen, a presence that operates on a plane beyond human vision, its existence confirmed only by the profound and devastating effects it wreaks upon those unfortunate enough to cross its path. This is not a creature that breaches the surface, casting monumental shadows against the sky. the ancient records are remarkably consistent. It never seemed to touch the water, they declare. Its movement was accompanied by vibration, not splashes. This detail is crucial. It suggests a being so vast, so deeply submerged, or perhaps existing in a state of matter so alien that its colossal passage through the ocean depths creates only a silent, resonant displacement. Imagine a creature of such immense bulk that the water simply parts around it without a ripple, its sheer mass generating only a deep, infrasonic hum that travels through the water and air, bypassing the visual spectrum entirely. The horror, then, is born not from what is seen, but from what is felt. It is the terror of the utterly ungraspable. The crew of the Al-Haq and the Samarkand Star did not scream at the sight of a gaping maw or a colossal eye. They succumbed to an internal torment, a madness born of a pressure in the skull, a vibration in the bones, a profound sense of an unseen, colossal presence. This lack of visual confirmation makes the fear uniquely primal. The human mind struggles to confront a threat it cannot define, cannot pinpoint, cannot even truly see. It is the fear of the unknown made manifest, a psychological terror far more potent than any physical monster. This elusive nature also makes it impossible to hunt or defeat Gyr'Tar-Og. How do you fight a phenomenon? How do you strike at a vibration? The frustration of the mariners must have been immense. To be assailed by an entity so powerful, it could unravel their very minds, yet so invisible, it offered no target for their spears or arrows. This invincibility, born of its intangible nature, solidifies its role as a true guardian of the deep, a force that cannot be overcome by human strength or cunning. Modern accounts, though rare and often dismissed as aberrations, sometimes echo these ancient whispers. Fishermen in remote parts of the Indian Ocean still tell hushed tales of strange, localized dead zones, where the sea becomes unnaturally still, accompanied by debilitating headaches and a pervasive sense of dread. They speak of a darkness below that is felt more than seen, and they instinctively turn their vessels away, knowing that some thresholds are not meant to be crossed. These are not sightings of a classic sea monster, but rather the continuation of the ancient pattern, the invisible touch of the abyss, the silent warning of a presence that guards its secrets with the unraveling of human sanity. Gyr'Tar-Og remains therefore the ultimate ghost of the unseen, a chilling testament to the ocean's capacity for mystery. It is a reminder that the deepest parts of our world hold not only colossal creatures, but also forces that defy our senses, entities that exist on the very edge of our perception, impacting us not with physical might, but with a profound, terrifying resonance that whispers of the ancient, sacred darkness they are bound to protect. And in that chilling whisper, we find the true, enduring terror of the abyss. After traversing the treacherous waters of ancient lore and chilling historical accounts, the modern mind naturally seeks anchor in the familiar harbors of science and psychology. While the profound mystery of Gyr'Tar-Og and the terrifying experiences of those who encountered it may seem to defy rational explanation, we can, through the lens of contemporary understanding, offer a few plausible hypotheses that might, in part, account for the phenomena described. These are not definitive answers, for the abyss still holds its secrets, but rather intellectual currents that help us navigate the strange confluence of myth and reality. The most compelling scientific hypothesis revolves around infrasound. As discussed, infrasound, frequencies below 20 Hz, is known to have potent effects on the human body and mind. Large, deep-dwelling marine creatures, even those not yet discovered, could potentially generate such frequencies through their movements, calls, or even simply through the immense displacement of water caused by their bulk. Think of the low-frequency vocalizations of whales, or the seismic waves generated by underwater geological activity. If Gyr'Tar-Og were a truly colossal, serpentine creature, its passage through the deep ocean could create immense, sustained infrasound waves. These waves would travel efficiently through water and then propagate into the air, resonating with the structure of wooden ships and, crucially, with the human body. The headaches, the chest pressure, the disorientation, Even the feelings of dread and paranoia described by the Arab mariners are all well-documented effects of infrasound exposure. The non-splashing movement could simply be the sheer depth of the creature, or the way its massive, streamlined body displaces water without breaking the surface, while the infrasound it generates is the primary sensory input. Another possibility lies in WUK, deep-sea seismic activity. The 13th century, like any other period, would have seen its share of underwater earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. These events generate powerful seismic waves that travel through the earth and water. Such events could certainly cause the vibration and air resonance reported. If these seismic events were localized and long-lasting, perhaps due to a slow-moving tectonic shift or a persistent hydrothermal vent system, they could have created a sustained, unsettling environment for passing ships. The psychological effects on crews, already stressed by long voyages and isolation, could be profound. While this explains the physical sensations, it doesn't account for the writhing body or the theological interpretations of a guardian. We must also consider the role of mass psychogenic illness, or mass hysteria, particularly under conditions of extreme stress and isolation. A ship at sea is a closed system. Prolonged exposure to an unsettling, unexplainable phenomenon, even a natural one like persistent infrasound, could trigger a collective psychological breakdown. If one sailor begins to exhibit paranoia or hallucinations, it can quickly spread through a highly suggestible and fearful crew. The compulsion to jump overboard could be a manifestation of this collective delusion, a shared dissociative state, perhaps exacerbated by the infrasound's influence on emotional regulation. The ancient mariners, lacking a scientific framework, would naturally interpret such events through the lens of their existing myths and beliefs, attributing the unseen tormentor to a supernatural guardian. Finally, a more speculative hypothesis involves bioluminescent phenomena and optical illusions. While the creature was never seen in the traditional sense, the dark body writhing beneath the surface could have been an immense deep-sea bioluminescent organism, or a vast swarm of such organisms moving in unison. The light they emitted might have been too faint or diffuse to clearly delineate a form, but enough to create a sense of vast, undulating movement in the dark water. Combined with the infrasound effects, this could have contributed to the profound psychological impact, blurring the line between perception and hallucination. Ultimately, these rational explanations do not diminish the awe or existential dread evoked by the tales of Gyr'Tar-Og. Instead, they deepen the mystery, transforming it from a mere monstrous encounter into a chilling interface between the known and the unknown. They suggest that perhaps the ancient mariners, in their terror and their theological interpretations, were reacting to a very real, very powerful, and utterly alien presence of the deep, a presence that science is only now beginning to dimly comprehend. The abyss remains, as it always has, a realm of profound power, capable of touching us in ways we still struggle to understand, reminding us that some guardians prefer to remain unseen, their warnings etched not in stone, but in the fragile confines of the human mind. So what do we make of Gyr'Tar-Og, this silent serpentine echo from the abyssal past? Was it a creature of flesh and bone, a leviathan of unimaginable scale, whose passage through the deep generated immense infrasound waves that shattered the minds of men? Or was it a manifestation of seismic activity, the ocean floor groaning, its tremors vibrating through vessels and human skulls, triggering mass psychogenic illness in crews already pushed to the brink by isolation and fear? The fragments of Al-Jahiz and the chilling, consistent accounts from the Arabian Sea refuse to yield a simple answer. Perhaps the truth, as it often does in the vast, unknowable realm of the ocean, lies in a terrifying confluence of both. A colossal, undiscovered being, capable of generating frequencies that unravel the human mind, rising from a deep disturbed by geological shifts or the ever-increasing, relentless intrusion of humanity. Gyr'Tar-Og, then, is not merely a monster from ancient texts. It is a primal concept, a living embodiment of the ocean's inherent power to protect its own. It is the sea's silent alarm, its terrifying immune response to our hubris, our relentless push into its sacred, lightless domains. The tales of the Alhak and the Samarkand star serve as a chilling reminder that some realms are not meant for conquest. Some depths are not meant for full illumination. Its silent, resonant warning echoes across centuries. The sea's darkness, its sacred, primordial essence, will always have its protectors. And as we continue to push the boundaries of exploration, to plumb the depths with ever more sophisticated instruments, one must wonder, are we merely documenting the unknown, or are we, with every sonar ping, every deep-sea dive, disturbing a slumbering guardian, inviting its unseen, mind-shattering resonance once more? What are your thoughts on Gyr'Tar-Og? Do you believe in such guardians of the deep, or do you find solace in the scientific explanations? Share your theories, your fears, and your own encounters with the unexplained in the comments below. And until our next dive into the Forgotten Chronicles, remember, the ocean whispers secrets if you only dare to listen.